Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening on the Research for Equity and Power Homewood Community Report Out. My name is Dr. Shanna Tharp-Gilliam, and I have the honor of serving in Homewood at the Homewood Children's Village for, actually, this is my 10th year in the neighborhood. Tomorrow is my 10-year anniversary.
Oh,
so,
wonderful.
Isn't that, I know, the timing is wonderful. So over the past year and a half, the Homewood Children's Village has been working alongside the University of Pittsburgh's School of Social Work. And we have worked along with residents on this project, the Research for Equity and Power project. It's been co-designed with these three groups coming together. Together, we held 8 community meetings with 35 youth and adults around civic engagement and equitable development. We've created a Equitable Development Playbook to document this work and on how residents can influence their neighborhoods. And we've also used illustrations from residents in the community as well as their experiences. So tonight, we're going to be engaging you in a conversation about what we've learned and our next steps. But before we get started, I would like to introduce our co-host. So Mary, can you kick us off on that?
Sure. I'm Mary Omer. I'm a professor in the School of Social Work at Pitt, and I am the co-program director of this project with Shanna. Thanks.
Excellent. Khadijah? Khadijah, I think you're muted. There you go. Uh-oh.
Yes, my name is Khadijah Bay. I'm a resident of Homewood and a CAB member for the Research in Equity and Power.
Thank you.
Am I coming back to say the rest? Is that how it goes?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to hear from you later on and hear about your area of interest.
Thank you.
All right, Nikisha?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Nikisha Carter, also a longtime member of Homewood. I also participated in the REP and the CAB program, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Ms. Zena?
Good evening, all. I'm Zena Scott, a very long-time resident of Homewood, Operation Better Block board member, and involved with Homewood Children's Village.
Thank you. Donnell?
Hi, my name is Donnell Pearl. I'm a lifelong Homewood resident and the community researcher for the REP project.
So go ahead, Donnell, let's pick up from there and carry on to the next area.
Okay. So we are here tonight to talk about our experience with the REP project and how that has impacted the community. We're going to be discussing the 4 critical concepts in neighborhood change, and we're also here to share the Equitable Development Playbook and invite people to come participate in our Citizens Training Academy. We are going to be sharing some of the experiences that our CAB members have had with research, how it's changed the perspective, and how it's impacted their outlook on the neighborhood in general.
Thank you. So yeah, as Donnell was saying, a few weeks ago, the CAB had gotten together and we were talking about the next steps, what we wanted to do with the project moving forward. And the idea came up to host an event where we shared our work. We opened up dialogue about how we could use this platform to really bring some positivity to our community and share the information that we've learned. But before we get started, we're going to talk about some basic instructions on how to use Zoom. Mary, can you take that part for us?
Sure. So most of you might have already used Zoom before, but we just want to give you a couple basic instructions. So we will ask you for comments maybe at various points during this conversation. So you can use the raise your hand icon if you want to participate. So look at your bar under participants, and then here's the raise hand right here. Then, so we're asking everyone to mute yourself if you're not speaking. That way there's less background noise. And here's the little mute button. Also, during the conversation, we're going to ask everybody to post questions or comments. So here's the little chat icon. You click on that, and then you can type your message right here on this line. If you have any questions about Zoom, Donnell, who you just met, you can put questions to him at his email address, or use the chat box and direct some questions to them. And so we're recording this session. Again, if you don't want to be recorded, you can turn your video off. All right, thanks everyone, and welcome.
Thank you, Mary. So I mentioned that the REP group met weekly for 8 weeks, and during that time we discussed 4 key concepts. Tonight, our REP team and our CAB members are going to talk about each of these concepts and tell you a little bit about sort of their perspective and take on this particular work. So first up, we have Donnell, who's going to talk to us a little bit about gentrification.
Hey. So let's first establish what gentrification is. In the context of Homewood, Homewood is a historically disinvested neighborhood. We haven't had major investment like a lot of other areas have had for at least, I want to say 30 years.
Donnell, we're having some trouble with your audio. I think your headset is kind of picking it up. Okay. Do you want us to perhaps go to someone else and come back to you?
Sure, let me try to fix that and I'll take care of some things.
All right, we'll move to the next person and then we'll come right back to you, okay? So let's have Ms. Zena. Can you talk to us a bit about equitable development?
I can. Good evening.
Amen.
That's equitable development. We're talking about being equal. And we all know that things are not as equal as we would like them to be. So in this case, we're looking for positive development that will be beneficial to all that live in Homewood. We're talking about ensuring everyone's particulars in and benefits from the region's economical transformation. So in saying that, we're looking at things that are affordable for us, not looking at things that are like Bakery Square, where you don't have prices on anything that's in the window. So if there's no price, you don't really want to go in and say, how much is that? Because when you got to ask that question, you know it's probably more than you can afford. And it's done that way deliberately. So examples of that is knowing what is coming into your community, being able to control it to a degree. With our Homewood Comprehensive Plan being passed by the planning board, the city planning board last week, it means that things that were put together by the community in the development you would like to see in your area, that's what should be happening. Not immediately, because it takes somebody with money to come in and do that. But you want to keep your eyes open, your ears open, and you want to know what's happening before it happens so that you're not fighting it after the fact. In that equitable development, we're looking at things that are being built here, such as the homes that Kelly and Hamilton, the homes that were built a couple of years ago on Susquehanna, Everyday Cafe, things that are beneficial to us that will help increase our business. and increase our community, but not to the point that we can't afford it.
Thank you, Ms. Zena. Donnell, can we
Yes.
come back to you now?
Is that better?
Yes, that's a lot better. Thank you.
Okay, great. So gentrification is what happens when historically disinvested neighborhoods sorry, can you hear me?
You're going and coming.
When you hold it, we can hear it. When you let
Okay,
it
good.
go, we can't.
Okay, yeah, it's so gentrification is what happens when property taxes increase, causing existing residents and businesses to no longer afford their homes and businesses. It's what happens when development happens unfettered in neighborhoods that have typically been disinvested for long periods of time. So what does that mean for someone like me? I'm a homeowner in Homewood, and it would put me in a position where I couldn't afford my property taxes anymore and force me to leave the city potentially or move into areas like Penn Hills, where there are less buses, less transportation, less access to healthcare, less access to all kinds of things like that. It has an effect of increasing property taxes, rents, and residents are forced to move, and you see a population change. Homewood being a historically African-American neighborhood could see, a radical racial demographic change. And that's what gentrification is.
Thank you, Donnell. Thank you very much. All right, next up, we have Nikisha. She's going to be talking to us about revitalization.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great.
Okay, good. I'm going to be speaking about revitalization. In Homewood, what we found in our breakout session was revitalization could be a very good change for the neighborhood because it does encompass what residents want and input from the residents. But it's always nice to have help from the public and private sector when you talk about revitalization. We were visited by a development company owner by the name of Derek Tillman. He gave a phenomenal presentation and pretty much impressed us all. And he talked about some of the revitalization that he's done in the Hill District and how he's made sure to include with that development and revitalization services that can be of use to the residents there, and how he has mixed use property, and he also makes sure that he has affordable housing for residents that typically wouldn't be able to afford it, but can afford it as a result of what he's done, and also providing those services so they can take advantage of those, and it helps them to be successful with that housing development as well, staying there, maintaining the property, keeping the property. And we also, I wanted to say just to piggyback off of what Zena said, another example of revitalization in our community is the CEC with the University of Pittsburgh. That's been a really positive change for our community. And also for the breakout session, just to think of some examples that you've seen in your neighborhood and in Homewood that can be done to increase the revitalization.
Thank you very much, Nikisha.
You're welcome.
And finally, Khadijah is going to talk to us a bit about civic engagement.
Thank you, Doctor. Can you all hear me?
Yes, you sound very clear.
Okay. I am now a CAB member, but as a rep participant regarding civic engagement, we had a very active role in improving our community by doing volunteer work, organizing cleanups, or having community meetings where we met a lot of officials, people that came into the neighborhood and wanted to do different developments. So civic engagement is just reaching out to different organizations and people. Also, we get involved in political activities as such as voting and getting to know the candidates. Civic engagement is playing an active role with youth and adults to influence the equitable development and create positive changes in our neighborhood, our beautiful neighborhood, Homewood. Thank you.
Thank you, Khadijah. So what you've heard basically is just our residents, our CAB members, our participants summarizing some of the key concepts that we covered in the REP. What we're going to be talking about in the next section is we're going to be doing a breakout, and we're going to be talking more deeply about each of these 4 concepts. We want you to really think about the times when you've seen civic engagement or gentrification, revitalization, or equitable development in your community. Also, are there places where you've seen these concepts on the news for good or for bad? So we're going to take a deeper dive into those areas. And I just want to remind everyone that if you have a comment or something that you'd like to say and you don't necessarily want to say it over the video, you're very welcome to chat and to put your comments in the chat box. All right, so for the next 15 minutes, we're going to have a conversation, and we're going to be breaking into small groups. But before we break into small groups, just look at the questions with me for a minute. So have you seen any examples? Why does this matter? Why does it matter that we're civically engaged? Why does it matter whether it's gentrification versus revitalization? Why does this matter? And also, have our feelings changed? So in the month since we started planning this event, it seems like what was already a crazy world with COVID and the quarantine got even crazier with the civil unrest and with the marches and the protest, basically to protest the inhumane treatment of African American people, murder of African American men, and just standing up for our rights as a people. And we were wondering among the CAB, have any of these events really helped to transform your thinking as far as what we need to do around being civically engaged, about some of the development that's going on in our community and also in our city? How do these concepts really relate to some of the current events that we're seeing? So those are some of the conversations that we hope to encourage you all to have in the breakouts. So you're going to have 15 minutes for that conversation, and when you get into the breakout room, introduce yourself, make sure you all know each other, and then pick a person to report out. Because when we come back together, we're going to actually give everyone a couple minutes. Each group's going to get a couple minutes to report back on their key findings and their key takeaways. So that's, I think, Mary, are you ready with the breakout rooms?
Yes, I'm ready when you are.
Okay, great.
Okay. Hold on one second. I'm going to put the time in. And here we go.
All right, everyone should see a box that says join the breakout room. If you could click. I know we had a great conversation in Ms. Zena's group. So if you have not selected your reporter, quickly across your team, determine who's going to select. Okay. Okay.
I don't see it. Shannon, I saw you taking notes, so you get elected. and we'll help you out.
Okay, help me out. Oh my goodness. Okay. So what we want each reporter to do is tell us the key ideas from the group's conversation and a bit about how the discussion impacted you, okay? So we're going to start with the first group. which is Donnell's group. Go ahead, Donnell. I give
So,
it to you.
okay, cool. So I was nominated to be the reporter for the group. So we kind of broke our discussion up into two different portions, one about COVID-19 and another one about social injustice at the hands of police. A lot of people felt that in the Homewood neighborhood specifically, that COVID-19 has really brought the community together. It has gotten people to engage with their neighbors in a way that we really haven't seen in a while. So I was just talking about how I've done some shopping for neighbors. We've made sure that my neighbors have had food or whatever they, what they needed. I could, if I said I'm going to the store, I can go for you and get something for you if you need it. We talked about how it really highlighted a lot of inequities around health, around jobs, how unemployment in the Black community is up by a lot. And how it's, my point was that it's really important for us to have a local economy, have jobs that are based in the community. The other conversation we had is I'm hopeful that we are in a spot that we can change a lot of the relationship that we have with police. We're having discussions around policing that we haven't really had before. And we were having discussions about defunding police, looking at the city budget and seeing how much is allocated to police work and how much work they have to do around policing that is not involved with violent crime, and how much we ask cops to do that should be handled by mental health counselors or social workers, and how the city should be funding a lot of those initiatives instead of having cops handle things around drugs and nonviolent crime. And so as far as how the discussion impacted me, it really gave me some hope. I was feeling a little bleak about the COVID-19 and some of the stuff that's happening in communities around the city. But I'm glad to hear that people are looking out for their neighbors, and since community does exist in Homewood, and that collective activity is happening. People are looking out for their people. It's great.
Thank you very much, Donnell, and thank you to the group that you were moderating. All right, Ms. Zenna, your group is next. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give a brief overview of what we talked about, but then I'm going to pass it to you and Dorothy to just kind of make sure that we covered everything. Couple of areas. Dorothy raised the issue around equity in the development that she's seen has not really been present for homeowners. So you want to just speak maybe briefly just to give the highlight of what that point was, Ms. Dorothy?
Well, my main point about talking about that first was that the homeowner has not been represented. And if you're talking about equitable development, I think that's a key issue, because that's one area of the population that you've left out of the equation. And that is why that was my biggest thing. And that's always been my thing. Anybody who's talked to me over these last several years of meetings knows that.
Thank you.
So
just to keep it brief, Dorothy, can you just tell us a little bit about like how your work with REP, if not this specific conversation, but your participation in REP, how has it impacted you?
As was the same was said a few seconds ago, it has given me some hope that things can be done if people are of like minds and want to participate and make things happen. They can, because everything starts with a discussion, and it really has given me some hope that something can work. That's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. Nikisha, your group.
My group was just Sharon and I, so we had more of a intimate conversation, but we did talk about revitalization, talked about her neighborhood, and I will allow her to speak on what she was referring to, but we kind of talked about some examples of revitalization that she's seen, and also why it doesn't matter. Sharon, are you comfortable sharing? some of those, why you feel like it matters to have a level of revitalization and the examples that you share with me?
Well, sure. My name is Sharon Blake, and I work for Pitt, and I'm writing an article about this this project. So that's why I'm in the meeting. But I do live very close to Bells Hoover, and I explained how important it is for me to be proud of my neighborhood. And I watched Warrington Avenue was pretty depleted when I moved up here, and it's slowly coming around with some little mom and pop stores. And it's important to feel proud of the neighborhood and safe. And Nikisha was saying the same. So.
We didn't really get to how our feelings have changed towards the issue because we kind of elaborated extensively on the first two questions. But I will say for the last two questions for me, my feelings towards revitalization have evolved since the pandemic and recent social injustice in the way that I realize that we really are a lot less represented and advocated for. I knew there were issues, but I did not know how big of an impact they've had on individuals. And I think maybe the reason is because COVID has happened, so people have more time to think about it. But, you know, the injustices, I knew it was a big issue, but sometimes you become very anesthetized to the weight of an issue. And I think I had become very numb to the weight of it until you see all these people everywhere, literally globally. And so I just realized how underrepresented we are, because I know that for me, that felt very different to see that I'm like, we're not getting the representation that we need, even for things like revitalization, because that is that's one of the many things that, especially the minority community does need. So that's my input on that, even though Sharon and I didn't get to actually talk about that.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Nikisha. Khadijah, can we hear from your group?
Hey everybody, this is Evie. I work on the rep team. I'm a Pitt student. And I got to really get to chat with Khadijah and to hear more, like, not only about like the work that she is doing and like all of different volunteering, but like what I found very powerful was that Khadijah was already doing this work. Like she was saying, she has these lots and she just naturally started just to like take care of them. And I really respected that. And I really expected in terms of like civic engagement, how this nonprofit Grounded came up and was able to like see the need and to plug people into that kind of work. And we also talked about like, just like how like throughout the years that Khadijah's lived there, her relationship has changed and how Grounded was and volunteering and becoming engaged was really important. We got to talk about the recent not recent, but like social injustice and COVID. And because obviously racism isn't new and state sanctioned violence towards African American community isn't new, it's coming up, but like what I found inspiring was that there is a group of within the university that are getting together and taking action, because like scholarly academia loves to talk, but to actually take action is another thing. And I was impressed to hear that within the leadership group, that the leadership was represented with women of color and African American women. So I didn't know that was what's going on within the school that I'm going to. So that was a good perspective. It's something I'm definitely going to be paying attention to, holding them accountable to, and I'm grateful that they're taking those steps.
Thank you very much, Evie and Khadijah's team. So I'm going to hand it off to to Mary. We only have about 11 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we cover all of the material. So go ahead, Mary, take it away.
All right, everyone. That was great. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about those 4 key concepts that we really focused on in our REP community conversations. On the screen, you'll see Evie. Evie, you just met. She is our MSW student working on the project. And then these are the other community advisory board members, some of which who are actually on the call tonight. Dorothy Bay, Dorothea Hall, Michelle Chestnut, Robert Green, Beverly Howell, Michelle Jackson, Tanya McClinton Todd, and also Charlene Wilson. You met the several others tonight that led the discussions about those 4 key concepts. And this is the cover of our Equitable Development Playbook. You'll see this is a picture of our crew, which included over 35 youth and adult Homewood residents that we engaged in a series of community conversations. And this playbook is the product of those conversations. So I'm going to just walk you through quickly what's in here, and then I'll put it in the chat box. All right, so it has several sections. These are the first 2. The first section talks about what the document is, who it's for, and how to use it. The second actually goes through all of those 4 key terms that we actually talked about today. Civic engagement, revitalization, equitable development, gentrification. And there's examples of those things also in section 2. Section 3 has, well, what can we do about these issues? Key engagement strategies for civic engagement, right? And so really, these are the things we talked about in our sessions, and they're highlighted here for people to actually use. And then here's our roadmap. Section 4 has the roadmap for equitable development, which includes looking at the issue that you care about, getting a deeper understanding of it, organizing people right around it, and then acting on it. And so what's really cool is some of the people you actually that heard from tonight, there's case examples for each of these 4 areas, strategies for each of these 4 areas, and a worksheet that actually you can use to say, okay, I care about this issue, and here's how I'm going to look, understand, organize, and act on it. And then section 5 has the equitable development policies and plans that residents can influence. And these are we had speakers come in and talk about a lot of these plans and policies and programs to our community conversation participants. And there are links to all of them, people to contact, who to email, who to talk to, who to influence, and how, right, in this section. And then we want people to stay involved, to continue to be civically engaged. So these are your organizations in Homewood, and also their Facebook sites. These actually link directly to the Facebook sites, to their emails, and then also the Carnegie Library. And then there's also information on how to stay politically engaged and how to contact your legislators. All right, so I am going to put those in the chat, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. If you're interested in participating in the next stage of the Research for Equity and Power project, we have citizens training academies coming up that are going to be co-led and co-designed by our residents and our CAB members. We would really love to have you to be a part of this. So we look forward to hearing from you. Feel free to click on the link in the chat and let us know that you're interested. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Shayna.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.